Alright, folks, how's it going? So, yesterday I got uh, a free Amiga 500, and I also got a Spectrum in one of those DK-tronic cases. These were both rescued from the dump by my friend who it's the same guy that put me on to the Commodore PET. Yep, he got these, rescued them from the dump, and gave them to me. So the Amiga I have completely stripped right down to its component parts and cleaned it up. It is a bit yellowed, as you can see. Some of the keys are more yellow than others, but really it's not too bad. These things are pretty prone to going yellow. Yeah, so these were both pulled out of the dump. The Amiga didn't come with its power brick, unfortunately. So what I did was I've hacked power supply from a PC, and I actually used some small nails. Yep, soldered the wires onto the end of the nails. They're a nice tight fit inside the pins are inside the holes of the power supply. So there's 4 wires: ground, 5 volt, 12 volt and minus 12 volt. So I've just hacked them onto the power supply there just to get this thing tested, and I can happily say it works perfectly. I also got a stack of discs with it there. These were a bit wet when I got them, but they've been sitting drying out there. I've tested a couple of them, that seemed to be dry. I tested, and I did get a few of them to work. So the Amiga itself is working fine. Like I said, I've completely stripped it. It was filthy, so I've actually stripped the keyboard right down. Took every single key off it, cleaned underneath and cleaned the keys as well. It took me absolute hours last night to do that. I also serviced the floppy drive on it, took it apart, cleaned the heads and greased the runners and the worm drive and stuff in it. It came with an original mouse, and it came with the wire there that goes to the power brick, but like I said, it didn't come with the power brick. So I'm just using this power supply in the meantime. I will get a power brick. Shouldn't be too hard to get one of those. So yeah, pretty happy to get an Amiga again. I did own an Amiga back in the early to mid 90s. I had an Amiga. Looking at this, inside this, one of the dates on it was 1991. I think it was actually on the floppy drive. So this is from around 91, 92. This was made. It has the 512K expansion in the base of it there. In the trapdoor at the bottom, it's the A501 or 502, the name of the expansion. Looked it up online, it's the 512, so it's upgraded. It's 1 megabyte of memory in this. And I have played a couple of games there. Played a bit of Another World, which I found. So it was a classic on the Amiga. So yeah, pretty happy to get that. So the Spectrum, when he sent me, initially sent me the picture of this, I recognised what it was right away. I've seen these DK-tronic cases several times. I've never owned one, but I have seen them. As you can see, I haven't cleaned this. I haven't done anything further than test it. So I wasn't holding out any hopes on this, just from the state of it. There's 3 keys missing, and there's all types of dust bunnies down in there. It's absolutely filthy. So I popped it open, and it has issue 2 board on it. If I can get that to set up there, the power supply there. Yeah, it's a bit untidy in here, but bit of blue tack holding the LED in as well, and there's a reset switch. So I had a look at this, and if you can see there, basically every single chip on this motherboard is socketed. There's 1, 2, 3, 4 chips, these small chips here, which are not socketed. Everything else is. All the lower RAM and all the upper RAM is socketed. So that was a good sign. I thought, right, well, if it doesn't work, it'll be easy to, swap the chips out and get this thing working. And I've seen this sticker here. Get this thing to focus. So it says they're locked up, are not initializing, and then ANO, whatever the hell that means. But then it says okay there as well. So I thought, right, fuck it, I'll just plug it in and see what happens. Come on, focus. So I plugged it in and it works. Surprisingly. I don't know if this sticker was put on it and then someone has repaired it afterwards, but some of these RAM chips don't sit particularly flush. Some of them are a bit skew-whiff. This one in particular isn't sitting in the socket very well. But like I said, I plugged it in, tested it, and this thing works perfectly. I haven't actually loaded a game up on it yet, but so I thought the chances of finding replacement keys for this are pretty slim. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to recap the board, and I'm going to put this Spectrum motherboard back into an original case, because I have the 2 broken Spectrums, still have them sitting in a bag. So I'm going to use the best of the 2 cases and put that back in an original Spectrum case, and it will be my sort of main Spectrum. Hopefully I won't kill it by replacing the capacitors, but it has been tested and working. So that's the plan for that. In my last video I had mentioned that I was trying to get some Dragon discs copied from downloaded VDK files. I wanted to try and transfer them onto actual floppy disk, and I have succeeded in doing so. I had to employ the help of this old computer here. This thing has been lying up in the loft for years. I've owned this about 6 years, this little computer. I got a batch of these out of the dump about 6 years ago. This is the only one that remains. It's 800 megahertz Celeron processor in it, with I think it's 384 megabytes of RAM. So I got this thing, got it all set up, put Windows 98 on it, because the program that I've had to use is called vCopy, but it won't read NTFS file system, so I had to format the computer as FAT32. So I put Windows 98 on it, and I had it all set up and everything was working fine, and then the fucking hard drive died. It just completely shit itself. So I actually had a spare 160 gig hard drive sitting, which is now inside this. I have done a partition on this, so I have about 4 gig set aside for Windows 98, formatted as FAT32, and then the rest of the hard drive has XP on it with NTFS system. So Windows 98 I probably not use, it's just there to allow a FAT32 partition so I can put my VDK files on. This vCopy boots up into DOS, so if I put this into the floppy drive, boot the computer, it boots to DOS, and then I can do my commands. And I've had great success with it. I'm actually, until I got these Amiga discs, I've been working with 4 floppy disks. So one has vCopy on it. This one was made into a Windows 98 boot disk. So I've had 2, they're actually HD floppy disks, which have covered the second hole in to make them double density. So I've been using them. Copying 720k is the size I'm formatting these to. So I'm formatting these to 720k, copying the disk images onto them, and then over at the Dragon here I have 2 floppy drives set up. These this Kumana drive, I actually got 2 of these. I bought 2 of these off a guy off Facebook. They're from a BBC Micro. Both were untested, and they arrived. I've tested them, and both of them worked perfectly. There's actually no rubber belt in these. I took them apart and serviced them all, and they're direct drive straight off the motor, which is nice. They're absolute bomb-proof. These things weigh a ton. Everything in it's metal. This front part's metal, or is it? No, well, there's a plastic cover there. This metal, the chassis is metal, all the parts inside are metal. They're definitely a lovely drive. So this is just a standard PC floppy drive. So I'm bringing the discs from there across to here, which you can then load them into the Dragon, and then I'm copying them across onto 5 1/4 inch discs. So as you can see, I've filled 8 discs there. I have yet to print out proper labels for them. I want to print out labels with, you know, a listing on it of what's on them. So that kept me busy for 2 or 3 days. By the time I fucked about with this thing, I had to replace the hard drive. I had to replace the floppy drive on it. It failed as well. It's just been a whole one thing after another. But now that I have it set up, it's working perfectly. So I need to get a shitload of double density discs. Once I do that, I can basically copy the files onto a disk and keep that disk. I don't have to transfer them back and forth. Although I did want a nice stack of 5 1/4 inch discs with plenty of software on them, so that I can use them with my proper Dragon disk drives in the future. But these Kumana drives are definitely a lovely drive, so I'm thinking about making up maybe some type of enclosure with hopefully 2 3.5 inch drives and these 2 Kumana drives in the same enclosure, so I have 4 discs, 2 of each size. But that's just something that's been around in my head. I haven't really went any further than the thought process. I had to modify my own ribbon cable for this. I wanted this drive to be drive 1 and this to be drive 2, but didn't seem to be able to figure that out. The PC drive is non-configurable. There's no jumpers or anything. So to get it, if you have 2 of these, to get one to show up as drive 1 and the other as drive 2, you have to modify the cable. So you take out the normal twist and you put in a different twist in the cable, and that allows the Dragon to see the 2 different drives. The Kumana drive does have jumpers inside it, so I fucked about with the jumpers, but I couldn't get this to show up as drive 2 and this is drive 1, so I just settled for drive 1 and drive 2. It was all I could do. It was either that or they both showed up as drive 1 or they both showed up as drive 2. You know, it was just a pain in the backside. So this floppy cable actually came with this drive. So I have modified it. There's a couple of twists. There's actually a twist on this part of the cable here that goes inside. So the twist in that cable is inside there. I have a splitter there. I was actually using this same power supply to drive both these. What I'm going to do is try and get one of those cheap Chinese power supplies with a Molex connector on it for using with a hard drive sort of thing. So I'm going to get that just to power these and make it a bit neater than having to have a big power supply sitting. I'm using the DOS controller, my remade DOS controller. If you can see there's a couple of dodgy bits in that cable. That was actually a couple of wires were broken in it, so that took a while. I had to I just made the wires a bit longer there to repair them, just to make it easier for myself. It's not the tidiest looking, but it wasn't as fiddly as trying to join them. So I've been having great fun with that. I've these big discs, I can only get 170k onto these, so maximum there's about 10 games on one of these. Some of them only have 6 games. It depends obviously on the size of the games, but I've a nice wee stack of them going there, and I do have some more down there. They're mostly Commodore 64 discs in there that Whiter sent me, but I do have a few more blanks there, and I'm actually expecting more in the post. So yeah, it'll keep me occupied filling discs up. So that's it. That's my update for this video anyway. I've been very, very busy. I haven't had a moment to stretch my legs. Basically, I've just been doing one thing after another, and it's been absolutely awesome. I've really enjoyed this past couple of days, especially since I got the free Amiga and the free Spectrum. That just made it all the better. But I've really enjoyed the process of getting the Dragon discs downloaded off the internet and then actually getting them on the proper floppy drives. It took a lot of work, but it was well worth it. So that's it, guys. Thanks for taking the time to watch. Catch you in the next one. Bye for now. Just to finish things off, as a quick look at the Amiga working. I don't have the modulator for this thing. I'm actually just using the mono composite output here and a single audio out. You see my hacked together power input there. So yeah, that seems to be working. Some of these discs are dodgy because, like I said, some of them were wet. So yeah, I don't know how many of them I'm going to be able to recover. The Amiga does complain about several of them, and some of them it'll read a certain, to a certain point, and then it just refuses to read anymore. So I've just been through a few of them there, testing them. Some of them work, some of them don't. I think that one's decided it's not going to work any longer. Yeah, just using this old power supply. So I have a few things to get for the Amiga to get it working properly, like a modulator and a power brick. So we'll get that sorted at some stage. There's no rush. Yeah, it's very nice to have one of these again.